Creepy and Geeky. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and today is part 2 in my 4-part series on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. On today's episode, Donna from the Donna Tha Dead podcast returns to talk all about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Welcome back to the show, Donna.
Hey there, welcome to me. I am so glad to be here. Why don't I just move in? I seem like I'm
Right?
always here. I should just move right in. I don't think anybody's going to notice me kind of lurking in the corner.
Oh, horror movie style, just lurking in the shadows.
Just lurking in the shadows, hanging out with my horror peeps.
Right.
I always love coming on your show though, because we just get to be dorks because we talk all the time anyway, and so we get to dork out for like an hour or so. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's always awesome to have you on here. Hopefully, it's always awesome for the listeners as well. That they'll feel our fun and enthusiasm for talking to each other about more horror and geeky stuff. So
Yeah, I will try to be brief though, because I think the last time when we talked about, I think it was The Howling and
yeah,
American One for London, it was like way over, like we could not stop talking about those
it was
movies.
nearly a 2-hour podcast.
So
Yeah,
I'll try to nip it down this time.
you know
This,
what though? You know what?
yeah.
People actually seem to have enjoyed that. I've gotten quite a few listeners for that episode. So
Oh, good.
you
I'm
know,
glad they didn't mind me prattling on and like just, having the summation of both movies. I felt like,
right.
Jesus, I'm sitting there telling them the whole story. Like they asked me to do this. Oh
We
my
will keep
gosh.
it. We will keep it more focused and just upon what we liked, what we didn't like, that kind of thing. The usual.
Yeah,
So
to the best of our ability. Yes, we will.
to the best of our ability. Yeah.
I'm warning you, I've had a couple of cups of coffee, so I'm a little wired today. Sorry.
Well, and Donna and I like to talk, so that's what happens when you get us together. We just talk. So
Can you imagine if we did this in person? Like,
oh
can
my
you?
god,
It'd be like a 5-hour podcast because we'd go off on a
right?
tangent. It would be
Oh
terrible.
my god, I know it's ridiculous. But it would be so much fun.
It would be a lot of freaking fun, though.
So, but that's why I love having you come back so often, and
And that's why I come back.
I know I should just make you a permanent co-host. You can just co-host with for all of my episodes, and it would just be
No,
fun.
that's too much pressure. No, I like the pop-ins. I like being able to
Oh,
pop
okay, I
in
see how it is.
and say howdy do and then pop right the fuck out.
Well, that's okay. I got you pretty much every month. So
You got me.
I got you. All right. Well, speaking of, we are, like I said, we're talking about 2 of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, number 2 and number 3. Number 2, we're gonna jump right in. Right with number 2, which is Freddy's Revenge, which is kind of like the odd one out of them all. It kind of twists the narrative a little bit, twists Freddy's powers a bit, and it's kind of the one that I wouldn't say a lot of people don't like, but there's definitely, it's not as high up there on people's lists. At least it hadn't been. I think that it's had a critical resurgence of late in the last few years, especially with people looking at it with the new lens, because it's even when it came out, it was a very queer movie, and I think that's what kind of turned people off for a long time. But then other people have come back around on it. Queer audiences have come back around on it and recognize it, especially in light of Mark Patton. And him coming out with the documentary about his experiences with that, which I still have yet to see. I need to see that.
I still haven't watched it. I need to watch it too. I have not seen it, but you're right. It's funny when this came out, and I remember when it came out, people were just not big on it. I guess for a sequel, they thought it would be different, and it almost makes me think of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, how nobody really liked that movie and now it's kind of got like a cult resurgence.
Yeah. No,
So
yeah, and I yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, and then you're right. Now that people can see the spin on it, I think for the 80s it was a lot for people to kind of take in, and then we get
Yeah.
a scream queen that's not a final girl but a final boy, and
Right.
I don't think
Yeah.
people had, we had already had that trope of a final girl for so long. I think that kind of threw everybody kind of for a loop, but it was definitely one that I liked from the get go because I thought it was interesting to have a guy be in peril and going through all of these things and kind of almost like a metaphor for going through puberty and teen. You're trying to figure out your sexuality and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so it to me it's a favorite. It's just one of those ones that I always liked it right out the gate when it came out.
Well, I think it's interesting too because the filmmakers themselves have said that they didn't intend it to be as queer as it is, but like, even watching it today, I can see like even back then it seemed to
Mm-hmm.
come off that way, and even now like so much more so now. You
Yeah.
can definitely see it as almost like this queer awakening style movie,
Yeah,
and
as an adult,
like
you definitely can see it. As a
yeah.
teenage girl back then, I couldn't see the forest with the trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
But now
exactly.
you're like, holy goodness, did they, come on, there's no way they didn't know what they were doing. Um,
That's what I'm thinking. Like, really, you didn't know?
I
So
mean, just thinking about one of my crushes in this movie, Robert Russler, and how he, pants. Well, I'm jumping ahead, but he
yeah,
pulled his pants down, how he pulled Jesse's pants down, and his whole ass is exposed, and then they're wrestling on the ground. But then later on, we see Jesse in his bedroom, and
popping
Robert
off.
Russler's yeah, Robert Russler's got like the satiny black sheets, and he's wearing on like silk boxers. Like, come on, you
Yeah.
had to know. Somebody had to know. There was definitely a wink. They
it,
had to know.
it definitely feels like it was meant to be that way, and for them to say that they didn't know just feels weird.
Yeah,
And and again, I need to really watch that documentary because maybe it's addressed better in the documentary. um but it's one of those things where I think that it's it everybody involved like made it that way in that way
hmm
without intending it to be, but it's like it's so, I don't know, there's something there, that just comes out of it, like you said, with all this stuff with Robert Russler and everything else, that it's all super in there, and it's just weird that they didn't, like, it doesn't seem to be as you know intended. It's
that's
just
yeah.
it's just odd to me that it wasn't intended at all. But you know, neither here nor there. It's interesting still to watch it nowadays and to see it in that way. And I think that it enjoys a better place in the franchise overall now, than it has, for like, say 20 or so years,
Right.
where people just didn't understand it. And I think, now that you've had Mark Patton coming out and talking about it, and his experiences with it, and his experiences in Hollywood after that,
hmm
that it's much more fascinating as this one-off entry in the series, because it does give Freddy different powers. Like he wasn't, he just haunted people's dreams. He didn't like take control of their
Take
body.
control of
And
their body. Yeah,
yeah,
that the
it,
possession part was really interesting. That aspect of him, because we had not seen that, and I thought that would be terrifying that you don't even know that you've had this evil entity take over your body and do these things, and you have no recollection other than seeing the dead bodies and the aftermath of it.
yeah,
That's scary, and this is one
yeah,
of those movies that I like because at this point, we do have some Freddy quips, but he's not like doing the whole shtick of having a funny line every time he kills somebody.
Right. Yeah.
We get a little beginning of that in this, and then it just kind of snowballs, and he just has one-liners every single time something happens. And I like the fact
Right.
that this one was still scary. Like this one still creeps me out.
Yeah,
Um,
this one is actually like, to me, this is one of the scarier entries. Like
yeah,
just it's super unsettling, especially with all the possession stuff and him trying to basically take over his body to come into the real world, and to move from just being, you know, the you know, the guy who kills in the dreams and into something more, you know, like
and
basically taking back
what
his life.
yeah, and what I also find fascinating, and it's a joke I make a lot, is that with horror families, they're oblivious to all of the shit that goes on
Yeah.
in these neighborhoods. Like his dad is perfectly fine that they bought this house dirt fucking cheap, even though that a woman went crazy and a guy was murdered across the street. Like that's the first thing I check is like, what's the crime like in the area before I move there. I don't know if I would just move in there just because I got a good fucking bargain. I mean, I know cost is high, but at what cost? Their AC's not working. Birds are bursting in the flames. The toaster is not
Yeah.
even plugged up and it's on fire. He doesn't think
Yeah.
it. He's just like, oh, it's just bad wiring. No, you got to leave, sir. There's the
Yeah.
time for you to make an exit. I,
Yeah.
I just
No,
don't
it's,
get it.
yeah. And I'm pretty sure there are laws that say that the realtor has to disclose any of the past history of a house. So,
Well, I mean,
like,
I think he knew. I think he knew because his wife was like, "Did you know this?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, we got the house at a good price." So he knew.
no,
He
true,
just
true, true.
he
Yeah.
just chose to like
Just didn't
say,
tell the rest of the family. Yeah.
yeah, why not? We got a bargain here. Just,
I bought a haunted house and I figured it wasn't real.
but I mean, yeah, the whole subtext of it it's like it almost feels like it's hitting you with a hammer when you're an adult and you see all of the like I said, the roughhousing, the showering, the coach with his whole S&M thing. you
Yeah.
know, I was just like, as a teen, I was like, okay, this is weird. Why would this teacher do that? Because I didn't understand what was going on. And then as I got
Right.
older, I was like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
wild. How did they get away with this shit? But it was the 80s, so that's
It
how.
was the 80s. Yeah. They got a lot of that got away with a lot of weird shit in the 80s.
I
So
also do like about this one that they actually didn't even want Robert Englund to return as Freddy, and they didn't
I
want to give him
hadn't
a
heard
pay
that.
raise. Yeah, they didn't
Oh
want to. They didn't
yeah.
want to give him a pay raise. So, uh, what's the guys? Robert Shea. He decided
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's not going to work. We got to have him back. And he actually got his raise when they needed him because they were like, this is not going to work with a replacement. And I can only imagine if we did not have Robert Englund as Freddy. And I'll be honest with you, this is not one of my favorite franchises. I have fun with it, but I cannot imagine anyone else playing this role.
Yeah.
It's too iconic. It's too much of him in that role. Um, but yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that
It'll
was
be
hilarious.
yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting if they once they do a new, like, because I feel like eventually they'll go back to the well on these and get somebody new to play Freddy. Um,
Yeah.
hopefully they'll stay away from the missteps of the remake. And I've already talked about the remake on the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you know the few little, it's not a terrible movie, but it's not a great movie either. And so I feel like there's something there they could tap into if they can get the right person, the right kind of script, the right story, and everything. They could actually do something really good with it.
Yeah, I feel really bad
Um,
because I really like Jackie Earl Haley. I think he's
yeah,
a really
I think he
phenomenal
did.
actor.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think he's a really phenomenal actor, and a lot of things that I've seen him in, he's always good. But this was not the role for him. I don't think that this is one that suited him. Like you're right, if they find an actor that suits that role, then it would probably come across better if they decided to reboot the franchise again. Um,
Right.
and I can't help but mention the girl that's in this movie. Do you remember what the love interest's name was? I can't remember what the character's name.
They don't.
Okay, well, it's no big deal. But I mean, we all
Yeah.
know that clearly she was cast because she looks exactly like Meryl Streep. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, she definitely. Yeah, I read that part. That because of her similarity and look to Meryl Streep. That's exactly why they cast her. So
yeah, because we're not going to get Meryl Streep in a horror movie. So I mean, this is as close as we're going to get.
we're gonna
And
we're
she
gonna
was like
just
the nicest girlfriend. Like she just was so patient and all of these things. This guy's like freaking out every 5 minutes, and she was just like terribly, terribly patient with him, and just had the biggest crush on him. And I was thinking,
yeah.
girl, Robert Russler is sitting right over there. What are you doing with your life?
I don't know. Maybe she saw Robert Russler in Weird Science and it was just like, nope, not dealing with that.
When he was like the jerk asshole guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he always comes across that way to me, but he's kind of cute. I can overlook that.
Donna likes the bad boys.
I like him. I don't know what it is about Robert Russler, but I really, really like him. So if he ever listens to this podcast, I'll probably just die. So one thing we do need to say is we actually got to see Robert Englund in this film without his Freddy attire and makeup. Yep. When he was the bus driver in Jesse's first fever dream. And I love this movie too, because at the beginning, they're having a dream about the bus and how it's, driving on this little, what is it? It's like on top of some boulders getting ready to like careen, and they have to kind of balance, and Freddy's coming at them. And then Jesse wakes up screaming, and his parents are so deadpan about it. They're just like, can't he just wake up like, I think his little sister's like, can't he just wake up like normal people? And I thought to myself, so this kid wakes up screaming every morning. Y'all don't think maybe he needs some mental health?
Right? Like, take him to a doctor. Jeez.
But they just chalk it up like, oh, the teenage boys. I've never seen a teenage boy scream every morning. Again, I was going to say something vulgar, but I moved on. They might wake up in another state in the morning, but not screaming. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, dude. What the hell? Most nonchalant parents ever. I swear to God.
Yeah. 80s movie parents were just the weirdest, man. It just, you never know.
I mean, I would rather them not be there because they don't seem to care. But once again, well, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, I mean, kids, we just ran the streets. So
we did.
It's not that far-fetched of them being kind of nonchalant about what you're doing. For anybody who did not grow up in that era, our parents would kick us out the door and we would be gone, and you had to be home before the street lights were home, and that was it. No questions asked.
We maybe came home for lunch,
maybe for lunch if you didn't eat at somebody else's house, because there was always one kid whose mom always stocked up for all the kids, so sometimes you didn't go home for lunch. You'd be gone for 12 whole fucking hours and your parents wouldn't know where the hell you were. This is before we had smartphones where they could ping your location and stuff. I'd be like 2, counties over before my mom knew where the hell I was. So, I mean, I guess
it's so funny just how, I mean, and that was how life was up to the 80s. Like once the 80s hit, the 80s kind of changed things. Because we had, the satanic panic, and we had all the, like, we did have a spate of
Atlanta
child abductions
and
stuff. Yeah. So we had all that going on. So that kind of changed the nature of letting your kids just run wild in the streets. So, but up to the 80s, man, we were still out there. So
it was a wild time. It's a wonder.
I lived on military bases, so I wasn't as, running wild in the streets, but, but
my God,
I was still running wild on the military base.
Oh my gosh!
Imagine that though, because you're living on a military base. You can't run too wild because there's literal dudes with like machine guns walking around, like protecting the walls. So I mean, you couldn't get into too much trouble.
I was one of those fortunate kids. One, I'm an only child. 2, both my parents worked. And 3, I was a latchkey kid since I was in double digits. So my house was usually the hangout spot. So I really didn't get in a whole lot of trouble as far as leaving. It would be more why are there so many people in my house? That kind of thing. But
I was going to Donna's.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, we had a pool in the backyard and my parents were never there. So it was like,
Your house was
Wow.
definitely the place to go.
And we had cable and no adults.
A pool cable. You were literally like the 80s dream place to go to. What the hell?
I was like the Hugh Hefner of the neighborhood.
You were like this girl in this show. She had the pool and the parents who were just like, "No, we're just gonna go upstairs now and
Pretty
have
much,
sex while the
yeah.
kids are out there,
That
their thing,
and
having
that
sex."
that was my favorite part too. It was like she was like, okay, he's gonna take over the barbecue. Mom, can you do something about him? And then, because he's playing what, Benny Goodman records or something. I think they made
Yeah,
a comment like, so the mom's like, why don't we go upstairs? And I was like, get it, Mom. You're really taking one for the team so they can enjoy the pool party. Like, she's such a cool mom. That was crazy. She was just like, let's just go to bed. And then I think something was going on. I think Freddy was starting, to like take over Jesse, and like all hell was breaking loose. And he's like, what are those damn kids doing down there? And Mom's like, never mind that, dear. And I'm just like,
yeah.
dang, this lady is persistent.
She's like, "I'm finally getting
Hilarious.
some. Come on."
Yeah, exactly. Who cares what they're doing? We're up here. I was like, all right, this is accurate, I guess. No. Um, but it's a great sequel. To me, I thought it was a great sequel. I know it probably pissed a lot of people off because they wanted to
Yeah,
see Nancy in the sequel, but we get Nancy. So that was coming, and I don't know whether it's
right.
because they were just trying to negotiate money, or maybe they were just trying to take this franchise in a different direction and have different kids going through it. Because if it's Elm Street, in one of the sequels he says every city has an Elm Street. You technically could just have him going to any group of kids and terrorize them, which is what we end up getting.
Well, yeah, and we discovered this, down the line,
Mm-hmm.
in the series of that, he basically needs, like, once the Elm Street kids are all dead, and taken care of, then he needs to survive himself and to continue to,
Right.
he needs more, kids to kill. And so he figures out a way to, branch out, which is
And
interesting.
that's terrifying. That's a
Yeah.
terrifying thought, because how do you stop a boogeyman that, once again, you have to sleep. You can't avoid it. And even if you try to avoid it, your body is going to collapse at some point. So in the first one, we see Nancy having, a coffee machine in her room, and she's just downing all of this cups of coffee. And then in this one, we have poor Jesse drinking like caffeine, sodas like constantly, and coffee, just trying to
Right.
stay awake and taking pills. And, you know, to me, that's terrifying, especially as an adult, because I feel like I never get enough sleep. I would be dead in like 5 seconds because I gotta sleep.
I gotta
I'm
sleep.
going to
Yeah.
sleep. I'll be like, do you, bro? I got to sleep. It's like I'm done. I'm done for. And I drink coffee, and coffee does not keep me up. So that would not
No,
help
yeah.
me, not one bit.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker. I drink
Um,
sodas, but the caffeine in sodas does not do anything for me anymore. It's
no,
like,
no.
I've just burned my system out on that. I can drink a soda and then just go right to sleep. So,
Yeah, I'm just
and I have
I'm at a
many
point
times.
in my yeah, I'm at a point in my adult life that if Freddie were coming after me, I'm 86. I'm just like, bro, I don't get enough sleep as it is. So do what you got to do, but make it quick because I'm going to bed.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah,
Um,
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. I was just gonna
Oh,
say, this sequel, to me, it was great. I think everything
yeah,
about this is great. I know people don't like it. Some people don't like it because of the homoerotic subtext that's kind
right,
of not really subtle. But like you said, it was an awakening for Mark Patton, and he didn't even know that he was a queer person at the time of this filming. And I'm
right, yeah,
sure I know a lot of people probably don't believe that, but when you're trying to figure out who you are, he probably didn't. It probably wasn't, telegraphed to him that this was who he was. It's astounding to me too, though. He's one of the few people that in this movie, spoiler alert, survived even after being completely taken over by Freddy. And it's always through the power of love or whatever, because the girlfriend, kind of
yeah, yeah,
transformed him. Fight him, you can fight him, that kind of thing. But it was interesting to see that. I don't know if I've ever seen a love story. Like we saw Nancy and we saw Glenn, but it wasn't really like a Romeo and Juliet type of thing, where they were like
No.
immensely in love. They were just high school teenagers that had happened to be dating, but there was
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
lot of grown-up romantic subtext with the two of them in this film. I had never seen that before in a horror movie, to this extent. It was like a grown-up feeling that she was trying to let him know that her love was strong enough that he could survive this. Um, I feel like I'm talking. Go say something.
No, no, I totally agree. I think that this movie, despite its, the people that have hated on it, and I get the, outside of the homophobicness, people maybe,
Right.
that kind of stuff, people who don't like the homoerotic undertones of it all. But outside of that, I know people didn't like it because it changed Freddy's abilities, and that it kind of twisted the narrative a little bit instead of him just inhabiting the dreams and trying to get
Mm-hmm.
out. But I think that it works, and I mean, I know that's partly why Wes Craven doesn't didn't like the movie either, because he was also, and that's why he ended up coming back for number three to write it, was
Mm-hmm.
because he was just like, okay, you know what, you guys fucked up, Freddy. I'm gonna rewrite the ship and get things back on track. Um, and so it's but I think this one is an interesting and fun and scary entry in the series, and I think that it can mesh well, if you want it to, there's no reason it can't. So
Yeah, that's true.
it's but
It's
it yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. We keep doing it. I was gonna say it's definitely one that people, some horror fans are just kind of split on it, like you just said, mostly because of the overtones of it. But I
Yeah.
just think it's clever. Like, we get to see a teenage boy going through all of this stuff, and we get to see that had Freddy actually been able to take over his body, he would have been way more deadly than in your dream. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's terrifying to me. I do want to bring up though when they're at the pool party, and then Freddy comes out and he's like slashing people, and fires are lighting up in different areas to the
Yeah.
point where they're cornered and they can't go anywhere, and the pool is boiling hot. I love the one peacenik dude that goes he goes up to Freddy and he's like, dude, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to do this. Why are you
Yeah.
doing this? It's like, you really think that you can reason with this horribly disfigured burnt man with razor claws on his
Knives
finger?
for fingers. Yeah.
He's just being very, so zen.
Literally
And I,
came out of the ground. It's like, dude, like,
what
let's
are you
go. Come on.
thinking? Yeah, do remember watching this though, and I know a girlfriend of mine always said she equated it to a boy going through puberty because he doesn't know if he's bi, if he's gay, if he's straight. And then every time he tries to get sexual, that's when Freddie kind of knocks in, and he just like interrupts it like a major cock blocker. And I thought, oh Jesus, I never really thought about it. She's like, think about it, because when he's making out with the girl in the cabana, that's when Freddie's tongue comes out, and
Right.
most women would be like, oh, okay, let's get it on. But he puts the tongue back in and he gets up because he doesn't want to hurt her. And I just remember my girlfriend being like, well, I don't know if he was gonna really hurt her if he had that. you know? And I'm sorry, y'all. I always have to bring the pervy stuff, but really the puberty stuff, I didn't even think about it. That is kind
Yeah.
of spot on, because you're trying to become the person that you want to be, not become Freddy. And Freddy keeps interrupting the person that he wants to be. Even with the Robert Ressler thing, when he goes into his bedroom in the middle of the night, and then Grady is dead. Like,
Right.
he might have been wanting to fool around with him, and that's why Freddy came out. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh yeah, every time there was something kind of slightly sexual, that's when something happened.
Right.
Um, it's
Interesting.
wild
Yeah.
how many horror movies have to go with puberty and what you're going through as a teen. It's just, ginger snaps, as you talked about on your werewolf series, and
Yeah.
Teen Wolf, and now thinking about this movie. Even the first one, Glenn wanting to be sexual with her and then nothing could come
Yeah.
out of it because, they're now dealing with what is it, Tina and Rod and him killing Tina allegedly, but it's really Freddy. It's like Freddy's like the
Yeah.
major cock blocker. He just gets in your way.
Well, and I mean, this goes into like 80s slashers in general, and
Mm-hmm.
in all of that, like it's always about teenage sexuality, and this um it wasn't intended to be like that in the beginning. The
Mm-hmm.
people who made the slashers were just killing teenagers. That's all it was. It had no like under there was no more significance to that. They were not trying to say, oh, you have sex, you're gonna die, and only the virginal girl can be the final girl. It was like never supposed to be like that. It's like
Right. But
never
then now you
intended.
need to have the
But
rules, like the parables of
but
what you
yeah,
do so
yeah.
that the
But that's what
slasher
it
can get
kind of
you.
yeah, and then that's what it kind of became like towards the end of the 80s and stuff, and it was just like, okay, and that was more in a response to it was multiple responses to just the repression of the 80s that was going on too. So we talked about this a little bit ago, just satanic panic and
Mm-hmm.
the stranger danger and stuff like that, but there was
Which is really
also
funny
this.
though, because
Yeah.
you have a split. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just it is
No.
funny that they're having this kind of moral compass, but then at the same time we've got stuff like, Cinemax and porn on VHS, and it's weird. Both of those
Yeah.
things kind of colliding at the same time.
No, it was
Um,
this weird repression in the 80s, and we're starting to see it again nowadays. It's really
yeah,
weird.
don't
We're
even,
starting to get all of this coming back around. It's like nobody learned anything from the 80s. Like
yeah,
we have
no.
this all this repression going on, and that there's like this weird satanic panic starting to creep in again.
Yeah,
Um
this is a weird timeline. I do not like
it's
this alternate
yeah,
universe that I'm in right now, but
but
this,
yeah.
sticking with the movie, this one to me is one of the better ones in the franchise. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it definitely is one of the still scarier ones. Freddy is still menacing. It's still creeping me out. The thing where he's ripping his hat off with the brain, and you can see the brain
Yeah.
pulsing, and just the manner that these people are being killed is really gross and very bloody and creepy. Um, this one still kind of keeps me on the edge of my seat as far as seeing how the kills are done. And even the little hokey pool party stuff, even that creeps me out because I can
Yeah.
only imagine if you couldn't get out of someplace and you got this masked maniac, this weird looking burnt maniac trying to kill you, and you have no idea who he
Yeah.
is or what the hell he is. You came there to get some beer and maybe feel a tit. You didn't come there for
Yeah.
all of that. I
Yeah.
mean,
And then you watch him walk through the wall and it bursts into flame. It's like, what the
yeah,
hell is going on
what the
here?
hell? I'd be thinking somebody
Yeah.
laced the beer or the food or
Yeah.
something because this is
Right.
not normal. um, but it's still one of the ones that I love. Like I always try
Yeah.
to upsell this one to people because once again, just like if you watch any James Bond movie, James Bond always had quips, but as they went on, they just got worse and worse. And that's how I felt about this franchise. Like the quips were just right. It was just like, come on, it just is enough already. Let me get to the horror. Let
Yeah.
me see some horror stuff.
I think, and this is what's interesting about Freddy. I don't think that the humor is necessarily a bad thing. I think it was better when it was dark, when the humor was really dark.
Right.
And that's what worked well for him and for the franchise as a whole. When they started, like in the later installments, when they start getting really silly, it doesn't work as well.
No.
So and we're going to be talking about Dream Warriors here, and Dream Warriors I think is really where we start getting the real quippy um Freddy, but he's also still which is ironic though, because as much as Craven was not wanting to do the funny Freddy, he leaned into it a bit with this script.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this one still has the darker edge to it, so that it doesn't have that silliness that like 4, 5, and 6 have. So,
Yeah, that's true.
but yeah.
Do we have
So
anything else to say about the second one?
um, I don't. Well, I just want to say I do like this one. It was one of those ones that it's I think it popped up on cable a lot. I think that's probably
Mm-hmm.
why I saw it a lot more. And it's a good movie. I think that it's gotten better over time. Like I said, with the resurgence in critical appreciation for it, and I think people looking at it from a different lens has only helped it in recent years. And I think it stands as, for me, one of the better entries in the series.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. It is definitely one of the better ones of this series, and um, one of the ones that I like just because the final person just happens to be a boy as opposed to a final
Yeah.
girl. So to me, that's also a selling point when they can have a final boy. I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool because we rarely get to see this.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's especially for the 80s because they really leaned into the final girl trope a lot. So it was interesting to see that, especially because these movies came at the mid to late 80s. This whole series was
Mhm.
largely the mid to late 80s. So it was just, it's the formula had already been set. So it was nice to see once in a while that they would change things up. So, and speaking of, we get into number three, and it's not just, I mean, yes, we get a final girl, but it's more, you know um it's you get a different group of kids in this one than you get in the last one, or in the last several. So um this one's Dream Warriors. Wes Craven returns as the writer, not as the director.
Mhm.
But he was just like, you know what, I'll come back. I gotta write the ship. And then Nancy comes back, which is great.
Which
um
is really great. I think that's
yeah.
what makes this one probably one of my favorites because we get to see Nancy. She's older and she's a little bit more equipped to deal with what's going on and familiar with it too,
Right. Yeah.
which is really helpful in this one.
Yeah.
So, and then I also love this one too because we get Patricia Arquette in like one of her earliest roles, and
Yeah.
nobody really knew her too much. Everybody knew her sister, and now we get her, and she is so much fun in this film because she actually has a rare power that she can use to bring people into the dreams with her.
Right. So they can all you know come together to fight Freddy, in a way. So they can so it's this one's fun. It's the interesting thing about this is that Wes Craven's original idea was to do something that he ended up having to wait on, and ends up doing in A New Nightmare. So the New Nightmare story is basically like this whole meta story that he has for that, about the actors
Mm-hmm.
having to deal with Freddy coming into their real life. He actually had that idea for number three. But then they were just like, no, that's just too complicated. And then so he had to go back and do this storyline, which it's still part of the main universe and everything like that. But it's just like, I think it's good that he waited, because it was good to see New Nightmare later on,
I
after
think so
everything
too,
that it
because and then he
yeah.
also has better CGI and a better budget, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. So it's but it's this one comes a couple of years after the last one.
Mm-hmm.
It's, let me see. Do do do.
Oh, and one of the things we didn't talk about in the second one was that Jesse comes across Nancy's diary, which kind of helps tie everything together in that
Oh
one.
yeah. Yeah.
Because I forgot about that they were talking about that, and then to see her in the third one, it was like, oh shit, they brought her back. I was like so
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, it's yeah, no, this one was really fun. I think that this one came out in 87. Number 2 came out in 85. 85. So number 2 came out about a year, like it
That
may
year
have even
after,
been less than a year after the first one.
yeah,
So they fast tracked that sequel.
right,
And I think that's partially why Wes Craven wasn't involved. He was like, I got other stuff going on,
right,
I can't do
exactly.
this with. So by 87, he was like, okay, well, I'll write the script and you guys can do that. I can't direct it, but I'll write the script. Um, but yeah, so by 87, it's been a few years, it's Freddy. I think by this point, I think Freddy by number two had become pretty culturally significant. Like he'd entered the pop culture like
Hmm.
hard. Like, and that's the thing that you have to remember though, too. Like, in the 80s, we had Jason and Michael, and we had them already, and they were pretty,
Right.
popular-ish and everything like that. But Freddy came out, these Nightmare on Elm Street movies came out, and Freddy became like bigger than anything. Like the character of Freddy himself was so iconic and so huge, it just overtook everything. It wasn't just the movies. He was like they had um Robert England dressing up as Freddy for like everything. He was doing
Yeah.
commercials and he was
He
doing
was doing
just
commercials.
everything. It was ridiculous.
And then
It's
in
like
this
when
one, he
you
did the music video. He's in the music video for the Dream Warrior song, like the Dokken Dream Warriors music
yeah,
video. So I mean, yeah, you're right. He became more iconic, and it's all of that MTV generation type of marketing that they did for
yeah,
this particular slasher. We didn't have any of that with Jason or with Michael Myers, and
no,
so having him everywhere was a big deal. He would do interviews as Freddy and
yeah,
talking to VJs and stuff, and it was cute and it was clever, and I think that's why he kind of stuck in a lot of people's brain because it was such an
yeah,
animated. The other two slashers don't talk, they're just motionless and they go
exactly.
on and they kill people, but this guy's got an attitude and he's saying all of these things and scaring you in your dreams, and dare I say charismatic. It's a charismatic slasher is what I
Yeah,
guess I should say.
absolutely. Yeah. No, and that's the thing. I think that it carried along it carried him along better in terms of that cultural significance. And that's the thing too, is I feel like, I remember I used to think that the Nightmare on Elm Street series was my favorite out of like the
Mm-hmm.
horror stuff, like during that time period, because I was I was like swept up in the Freddy mania of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And and then having looked back at these movies, I realized that there's some good ones. One, two, and three I think are pretty solid. But the latter half, four, five, and six are pretty like they kind of drop off after that point.
Right.
They're not super terrible, but they're not great either. Um, and they lose a lot of luster. And I'll definitely be getting into that in the next couple of episodes. But it's interesting that at least with number three, with Nancy coming back, with Wes Craven coming back, that it's at least more on target with what happened with number one. You got just Freddy in the dreams again, and this time it's a group of kids in this hospital, um, who are having sleep related issues and everything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
they're all there to keep them safe. And then not only do we get Nancy back and we got Patricia Arquette, but we also got Lawrence Fishburne, being
Yeah, we do have
cool as
Lawrence
ever.
Fishburne.
Like that guy has never not been cool. So
Oh my
it's
gosh.
just
And then
it's
we
just
also
so
get
funny.
Nancy's dad is in this, and then
Yeah, yeah, John Saxon.
I'm forgetting somebody that's oh God, the girl who was like deadly with the blades. I cannot remember her name.
Um, sorry.
I'm gonna have to look it up because it's gonna bother
I
me.
know I should have this stuff ready. I should actually work with some notes, but I never do.
Yeah, no, that's
Uh,
okay. I like when we fly on the cuff. Jennifer Rubin, she played, I think, Taryn. She
Taryn,
was also
yeah,
in a movie called Bad Dreams, which was another horror movie that dealt with a guy invading your dreams. If you've never seen that one, oh my gosh, it's creepy. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of really cool people in this. And Ken Sagos is one of my favorite as Kincaid. I think
yeah,
he's probably the reason I love this movie the most because he's a black character that, spoiler alert, didn't die. So
yeah,
at least not in this one. I'll say it that way. Not in this one. He lived.
yeah,
We had two black characters that lived. We had Lawrence Fishburne and we had Ken Sagos. So I was very excited. I was like, what the? he lived.
Yeah,
So
that's a funny thing though too, is like having watched a lot of these movies and stuff like that, it becomes evident that the the black person doesn't always die.
they
Um
don't.
they don't, and they don't always die first, even if they do die. It's just this weird thing that happened, like that became this cultural thing. And maybe it's later, maybe it's in the 90s that it started happening
Hmm.
or something. I'm not sure. But like I would think that, I think it maybe just happened enough like in movies that people were just like, okay, well, this happens a little too much. Um,
Yeah.
but it definitely didn't happen as much as it seems to. But which is good. Like, that's always good. I'm glad to, when we go back and watch these movies, that it doesn't seem to be nearly as bad as cultural seems to
He
make it out to be.
he was my favorite in this, mostly because, well, yes, because he was the black character and he lived, but mostly because of his overall attitude. Like he just was like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. And then when we
Yeah,
get to see them in their dream world, when the character, a Kristen character, pulls them into the dream, they all have specific things that they're good at, that they do in their
yeah,
dreams. In your dreams you can be anything, and in his dreams he's powerful. He can, like, bend steel, and he's like super strong, but he's got such a mousy voice. I
yeah,
love hearing him talk because he just doesn't sound, he doesn't have like a baritone Barry White kind of thing. It's more of like a high pitched Tony Hawk kind of thing. And so to see this kind of burly brother, with this kind of really light voice, just be a badass, I reveled in that character so much because he just
yeah.
was so much fun.
Well, yeah, and that, like, everybody in that, like, is just, they all have, every character in there, the kid characters, they all have some kind of issue they're dealing with, and obviously it's all Freddy. um
Mm-hmm.
and then, one of them's mute, can't talk, or he not mute totally, he's like,
But something happened and he was traumatized
something
and he couldn't
happened,
speak.
yeah,
Yeah.
couldn't speak. And then, Taryn, has been using drugs, and so that comes back later, and and so it's just like, it's an interesting, like, mix of the characters and stuff. And so, yeah, when they do get to, display their powers and stuff, like in the dream world, it's nice to see, their personalities, play a part in that, so
I thought it was nice too because up until this point in the first movie, you know, each of those teenagers had those dreams about Freddy. Rod even made a note about the guy with the nails, and but they never talked
right,
about it, so they weren't open about it.
yeah,
In the second one, it was more so just Jesse, and no one else was having these dreams. And then in this one, they've all been afflicted by it, and then they all come to this group therapy to talk about it, which, one, I really like the fact that they showed kids in a group therapy in a hospital trying to
yeah,
work these things out. But I always get pissed off when I see mental health in horror movies because, well, it's a horror movie. I know that nobody's going to believe the kids, and they're teenagers. Nobody's going to believe them. But
right,
why the fuck a doctor would not think that there's something wrong if they're all sharing the same dream? She's saying it's the
yeah,
shared psychosis, but these kids don't even fucking know each other. Like, they know each
yeah,
other because they're in group, but they were in totally different parts of the city or wherever they were, and they're all telling you the same projection, and you're just chalking it up to, oh, it's a shared psychosis. In what world?
yeah,
What world would that even happen? Um, and that always pisses me off. But then, we're horror fans. We're supposed to get pissed off at it because nobody's ever going to believe the kids. I think Eight-Legged Freaks is the only movie where somebody smart said, "Hey, we should listen to the kids." you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um, but it's one of those ones I really like too, like you said, because you get to see all of their different personalities and what they're good at. There's one poor guy in this movie, forgive me, I can't remember his name, but he made puppets. He could, he would make the puppets, and of course he died as Freddy is doing the little puppets on the string and making him
right,
sleepwalk. And he had already said early on that he sleepwalks, and that was one of his issues. And so, to see him have this horrific marionette kind of control over this kid, to this day, that the special effects for that is really annoyingly creepy to me still. I mean, I
Oh
know it's
yeah.
fake, but to see his tendons come out like that and to see this kid walking in a kind of robotic stiff motion because Freddy is puppeting him, I was just like, holy shit, this is gross. This is so creepy, you know? Um, and there are a few things in there that, you know, make me kind of unnerved, and that's one of them. Also the one where Christian's kind of having her sleep and then he slashes her and then the mom comes in and it looks like she's trying to cut herself because she's got the razor in her hand.
Yeah.
Man, whoever did the effects work for that, kudos to them because it was really, really jarring for me to see that. Um, I don't know. This one, we've got more kids. We already know if we got more kids, that means a higher body count. Some of these kids were just plain dumb when they were in the dream world trying to attack Freddy. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, some of them were just, the Taryn couldn't help it. I mean, she was a former junkie, and I know that that probably fucked with her head because, you know,
Yeah.
we even saw a creepy orderly guy, you know, trying to get up with her, telling her that he could get her
Yeah.
some drugs and stuff. So clearly she was probably a really recently cleaned up addict. That makes sense, you know, that she would follow. But the one Harry Potter looking dude
Yeah.
who was in the wheelchair because of his accident that he, you know, quote unquote accident, he basically tried to kill himself. Um, he's doing his Merlin the Magician Harry Potter shit, and then he feels the need to run up on Freddy, and then Freddy, of course, kills him. And I thought, why would you run up on him? Once again, I'm thinking as a logical black woman. so I'm
Yeah.
so I'm like, what in the hell were you thinking he was going to do if you got close to him? As a master of dream world, I would just think we should all just, for a lack of a better word, Batista bombed the shit out of him at one time. But that would be my thinking, you know. I don't, there's so many things that I yell at my screen about, and I know that that's intentional. That's got to be, why would you do that? Even the poor
Right.
little girl who wanted to be on TV, and then, you know, we get the famous "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch"
Yeah.
line. I just, you know, some of these people, I'm just like, what were you thinking? But it's a great movie because we get to see Nancy come back, and she's full on rogue, you know, because she's got the gray streak,
The
gray
gray
streak
streak. Yeah.
from the first movie. She's older and she's trying to help kids. You know, she's obviously going to school and, you know, trying to help kids and becoming some sort of therapist. And they're doing all of this experimental stuff. And, you know, who is it? Craig Wesson. He's the only doctor there that's wanting to listen to her and kind of help these kids, you know, to get through whatever it is they're going through. Even if he didn't believe that they were seeing the same guy, he knew that they needed help.
Right.
As opposed to the older doctor who was just like, no, we just need to sedate them. These kids need a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've never been so frustrated as looking at a doctor on screen in my life. Like, I
Well,
don't get it.
we also get introduced to something that doesn't really get played into too much until later, but we get the introduction of Hypnosil, which is the drug that Nancy is taking to give her dreamless sleep.
Right.
And so this doesn't really come into play again later until later in Freddy versus Jason. And we learn that the kids that are on Elm Street there have been, you know, taking Hypnosil also to keep Freddy away. So, or, you know, the kids in the hospital were, you know, because we get reintroduced to the hospital in that movie as well. So it's an interesting aspect of the series that comes into play again later. And I feel like, and I've mentioned this before in my Freddy versus Jason episode, that I feel like Freddy versus Jason is a really good distillation of both characters and franchises and honors both of them in ways that, you know, there's a lot of people who kind of, you know, shit on Freddy versus Jason. I'm like, it's actually really good and really, you know, focuses on the things that make the franchise, both of their franchises work, and it meshes them well. So
yeah, I think it does too. That's one of my
yeah.
favorite ones to watch. One, because we get to see two slashers that we would probably never have seen in a movie together. and two, you're right, it pulls in all of the things that we like from those franchises, and it does work. People really did shit on it when it came out. It was not well
Yeah.
received at all.
Yeah. It's just weird. But yeah, we get this new drug, these new aspects of stuff, and like we said, we get Patricia Arquette's character, Kristen, who can pull people into her dreams, so that, and something she does it accidentally with Nancy, and Nancy realizes, oh, hey, this is actually useful. We can use this if we can all band together into one dream.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can all fight Freddy. And then, once they're all in the dreams, they discover, oh, hey, we have these abilities, we have the power. And it was interesting too, because I remember as a kid that um friends of mine at the time, we were all like, okay, yeah, what would our powers be in the dream world? And
Mm-hmm.
we would think about that kind of stuff. We would talk about it all the time, about like, oh, what kind of dream power would you have? So
Right.
this movie definitely did have an effect on us as kids, because we were talking about it a lot. So,
And the other
and
thing I
let's
do
see.
want to
Yeah, go
bring
ahead.
up too is like I mentioned when we were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, with Nancy having the pot of coffee and then Jesse having coffee and then the no dose pills and the caffeine. I love this one because right at the beginning we see Kristen just eating freeze dried Folgers out of a jar and then
Yeah,
drinking like Diet Coke or something. And I was like, damn, this girl is just going straight
she's
for the caffeine. She's not even trying to filter it through water or anything. She's just eating
yeah.
dry freeze dried coffee with soda to keep her up.
Well,
Terrible, man.
and I think it's funny though too, because now you can get that. Like, their Coke makes a product where it's coffee and Coke
And
together.
yeah,
Like,
it is
I can't
funny.
imagine drinking that, but
No.
like, that's but that is something they make now. Like, kids today, like, if they're dealing with Freddie, man, they got lots of products. They got Monster drinks and Red Bulls and, all kinds of stuff to
You'll
keep them
never go to
going.
sleep. Yeah. But I thought that was nice. It was a nice touch because we saw that right in the opening credits. Like we hadn't
Yeah.
even gotten to know this girl other than seeing her making this really awesome paper mache of Nancy's house, just of all of the popsicle sticks of her house. And I thought, geez, that was a great way to let us know that this kid is already being plagued with dreams, because who is down in mouthfuls of dry coffee and
Yeah.
soda? Like, Jesus, that's terrifying. Everybody in this is like a 30-year-old teenager, and I'm there for it. I love that.
Yeah.
I love when they're like in their late to mid 20s. We're supposed to believe that they're like 15, 16-year olds, but okay. But people did look incredibly old in the 80s, so
Oh my
that's
God.
not
They,
too far
like,
fetched either.
I mean, that's what's so funny too, is like, you go back now, like, today, I would say today, like, people in their, mid 20s can still, some people can pass for teenagers.
Yeah.
Because, I guess with all the preservatives and everything like that, we're all looking a little bit younger. But back in the 80s, you could, like, it was ridiculous because they were trying to pass off these mid 20s, like, adults as teenagers. And, like, dude, all these people had wrinkles and crow's feet and everything else already. And you're like, that is not a child.
I mean, it was so funny. It was like, Nancy shows up and we're supposed to think she's older because, she's got the full on poof mom bouffant hair and the
Yeah.
gray streak from where, from the earlier film.
She
But
was
she
only
looks about
literally
the same
23 years
age.
old.
Yeah, she looks
Yeah.
the same age as the kids that she's supposed to be helping out. And I was like, oh, wow. But honestly, y'all, whoever's listening, go online and look up anything that has to do with kids and high school in the 80s, because they all look like they were like 45-year-old adults. I don't know what it was about the 80s. Maybe it was the makeup, maybe it was the hair, but everybody looked older.
Okay. I didn't. I still look like a kid into my 20s. So,
I mean, well, I'm short, so I don't have a choice. I'm gonna perpetually look like a teenager because I'm not even 5 feet tall, so everybody assumes I'm younger than I am anyway. But uh it's astonishing to me when we have these movies how old these people look.
Well, I
I
mean,
will
you look
I
at
will
Wilford Brimley in The Thing, and that dude was like 20 at that time. No,
he was a
I'm
hard
just playing.
45. I bet you
Yeah.
he was a hard 45.
Oh, like that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure he was around 45, like right around that time.
Yeah,
That
because in
dude,
Cocoon he was like 50. You've seen those memes
yeah,
where it's like Paul Rudd's the same age that Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon.
yeah.
How the fuck? How the fuck is he the same age?
So, and that's what's so funny is like some people just aged hard.
I guess. I mean, damn.
Yeah, no, that was the
So I love this movie. I'm gonna let you
yes.
know this. I love this movie. However, I hate this movie for some things.
Okay,
Excuse me. I'm gonna have to clear my throat for this one because it's gonna be a big one.
do it.
I love this movie because we have all of these different teens, and yes, they all have these powers. They use them terribly when they go into the dream world, but that's okay. I probably would fold if I saw this man in my dreams too, with the
Yeah,
exception of Joey, who was the mute, and then he does the scream and he breaks all of the mirrors, and that's pretty damn cool.
yeah. He
Um,
pulls a black bolt.
he does pull a black bolt, not to his parents, oh, thank God.
Yeah,
Um, but the thing I hate about this one is we have the figure. We didn't talk about that. The nun, the harbinger,
oh
to give us
yes,
these little
yes,
clues. And she's giving Craig Wesson's character like clues about Freddy, and how he was the son of 100 maniacs or whatever. And
yeah,
like, okay, he's the son of one maniac. One sperm
yeah,
got one egg. Let's
yeah,
stop that. Okay, let's stop that bullshit right now. I
yeah.
understand what you mean, lady, but no. But then she's giving us this like otherworldly presence, and she's telling him all of these clues, and he needs to be buried in like hollow ground and his bones, and I'm like, okay, what what are we actually doing here now? Um,
Well, this is the start of a trilogy of movies: Dream Warriors, Dream Master, and Dream Child. That all like have this weird like through line of this mom coming through and coming to it like each segment of this has to do with like trying to stop Freddy and like
mhm.
there's this whole metaphysical religious like hell stuff going on into all of this that it's a weird aspect that goes through, and that yeah definitely is something that I did not like totally enjoy, especially when they don't really pull it off well in the next couple of them for
Yeah,
me.
and they didn't really pull it off well in this one for me. I felt like they didn't have anything for that character, for Craig Wesson's character to do other than to be opposite of the stern psychiatrist in the movie. Like his plot was going nowhere, and we really didn't need him. Nancy and the kids would have been fine. I don't know what we were supposed to gain from it. Well, let me rephrase that. I guess we needed him because he was an outsider and he was actually helping, to inter the bones or whatever.
Yeah,
But I don't know. His character did nothing for me, and then bringing on the character of his mother did nothing for me. I was just like,
yeah,
okay, didn't really need this part, but okay. That's the only kind of nitpicky horror thing I have as a horror
yeah,
fan. I felt like that could have been gone. And then but then we wouldn't have John Saxon. We wouldn't be able to bring him into the fold to tell us where the bones actually were. It's like
right, yeah,
they went through this whole kind of convoluted plot with his bones and putting him in a what is it, junkyard. And I mean,
yeah.
that was like, what am I doing here? Let me go back to the kids. Let me focus on the dream world and what they
Yeah,
can do to fuck Freddy up. That's all I want to know. Just get to that stuff. So that's my only kind of nitpicky, and it's small. It's not. I mean, I can fast
yeah.
forward through that. That's not going to bother me that much. But I just felt like
Well,
it didn't have a place. It felt disjointed for me.
right.
It felt disjointed.
Well, and I think part of it is too that so he, the fact is that Freddy the Nightmare on Elm Street movie, the first one, helped build New Line Cinema, which is the production company that put it
Mm-hmm.
out, the studio that put it out. And so that helped Robert Shade build up the studio and started, doing other movies and such. And they, as time went on, Freddy became this monolith. And
Mhm.
it was just something that he continued to do. And I don't think he was too keen on it. And so each one was pretty successful and he just kind of had to keep doing them. Which is why by the time we get to number 6 and Freddy's Dead, he was like, that was why it was called Freddy's Dead. He wanted to put a stamp on that and say, look, we're done, we're not doing
Yeah,
these
he wanted
anymore.
to be out of it. I got you.
Yeah. And so, it's fine and everything, but it's one of those things that I think Freddy works better as this thing where you're not trying to kill him. You're just trying to stop him from for now. You're trying to
Right.
gain this ability, like this power over him. If you stop believing in him, then as we saw in the first movie, that if you don't give him the power, he has no power over you.
Exactly.
Um,
Like she turned her back on him and that was the end of it.
yeah.
It didn't do anything. Yeah.
And so I think that, that is more interesting of a through line to, to continue on with. Each segment of these should have been more about how these kids figure out how to, whatever works for them to get rid of Freddy. Um
Right.
and continue their lives without dealing with that. But that doesn't mean Freddy's gone. It just means Freddy's just dormant until he can find the next victims to believe in him. And again, this goes into what happens with Freddy versus Jason. The story had gone dormant. Nobody knew who Freddy was anymore. Nobody was
Hmm.
talking about it. And then so he needed Jason to come back and wreak havoc on Elm Street so that people would then go, what's going on? Oh, there was this
Right.
killer. Maybe it's this. That was again, that was ingenious. That was a really good plot, to make people believe in Freddy again, to bring him back into the world. And so I think that's a, you know, um, and then we're gonna get into it, not you and I, but uh I'm gonna get into it with another guest on a New Nightmare, and that aspect of Freddy's story is very interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
I love that, and there's an aspect of this that we find out in number 6, which is not a great movie, but it comes with a very interesting plot point that there's these demons that have like given Freddy this power.
This
And I
power.
thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting aspect of it that could have been done so much better. That that's how I kind of and I didn't remember having watched number 6 before I got to it. And as I'm
Hmm.
watching these movies, I'm like, that was it, literally what I was thinking of. I was like, well, what if there were dream demons that were giving him these powers? And it's like, oh, okay, it must have been deep in my subconscious that I remembered that, like somewhere down deep in there. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's from number 6. So, but yeah, so this is an interesting series. Now, to me, it starts going downhill from 4, 5, and 6, but really, I think 2 and 3 are very strong entries in the series. Number 1 will probably always be the best one,
Yep.
in a lot of ways. Um, and I'm partial to A New Nightmare now. Also, I only watched that for the first time recently. I'd never seen it before.
Oh,
And
really?
I Yeah, and so I really liked what I liked again, I'll get into that later, but I just liked so much more about that
Hmm.
and it's actually a really great companion piece to number 1. If you watch number 1, then you watch New Nightmare, you can kind of ignore everything in between and really get this really good double feature of movies as well.
I
So
kind of like it just because it's so meta. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like so it's like right on the nose and then it goes into a weird, well, you'll talk about that on your other episode. But
yeah,
I really I agree with you. These two are two of the better entries for me. The first one will always be my favorite just because that one just gave me an overall feeling of dread and it was creepy. But I absolutely love the second one just because of the final boy presence alone, and then kind of a continuation, but then kind of also a deviation of what we had in the original of the first film. And then the third one I love because we have now all of these kids, like you said, that have their own personalities, they have their own powers. They're all kind of trying to band together to thwart Freddy. And then also, we get to see a lot of young actors that are, go on to be bigger than this film. So it was a great one for me. Dream Warriors,
Yeah.
for the longest, that was like my favorite one.
Right. Which one would you consider your favorite now?
I think the first one is still my favorite, and then the
Yeah.
third one, and then the second one, and then the rest of them kind of fall in line after that. Like
Right.
that's pretty much how it
Oh
goes
yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think 4, 5, and 6 are just like, it just kind of tapers off right at that moment. Like 4 is okay, 5 is in, then 6 is really nah. And so but
Yeah, I
then
mean, but I do love them. I am, like I said at the top of this episode, it's not my favorite franchise, but I've grown to
yeah.
love. I love that character. I don't think I would pick it as my favorite horror franchise, but I have a lot of
Right.
fun with it. And now that you're doing these, I might have to go back and watch the other ones that I don't really give a lot of love to. I might have to go back and check them out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was interesting to rewatch these. Um I had seen I had bought the pack of all 7 of the movies, all the originals,
Hmm.
a few years ago, and I'd watched 1 through 3 at that time, and didn't progress from there. But like, so 4, 5, and 6, I don't think I'd watched any of those in over 20 years.
Yeah, it's
It
probably been that
definitely
long for
almost
me.
almost 30, probably over 30 years,
Oh,
honestly.
geez.
It probably hasn't been since the 80s that I've watched any of those. So it was definitely an interesting rewatch of all of these, because like I said, 4, 5, and 6 I had no real memory of.
Mhm.
And then watching A New Nightmare was completely new to me. So it was, and the remake was all new to me as well. So it was definitely, this has been an interesting watch for this series, getting to revisit these, and kind of, you know, getting to see how good or bad they were.
Yeah,
And just
that
kind of
is
go back
true.
and go, yeah, and then just kind of go back and go, did I really like Freddy, or was like, did I really like these movies, or did I just like Freddy just because he was funny and everything? And I think that's
Exactly.
really what it was I just really liked Freddy because he was funny. So
He was funny, he was charismatic, he had one-liners, and then, I got to the when I started getting to the point where I was groaning with the one-liners, that's when I think I kind of fell off. But I honestly think I need to go back and rewatch these and just kind of shut that part of my brain off and just enjoy what I'm watching. Because that's what I ended up doing with these two when I rewatched them. I was like, did I really like the second one? Yeah, I really did. I really liked the second one
yeah,
as much as I thought. And I always thought the third one, that was just one of those ones I wish we had seen more of kids that were like confident in their dreams, and I wish we had more of Kristen. Well, I'll let you talk about that on that other episode. I'll leave
right.
I'll leave that where it is. Anything else we can say about the Dream Warriors other than it had a rockin' soundtrack by Dokken?
Yeah, rocking by docking. Um, no, I enjoy the movie. I think it's definitely one of the stronger entries, and of course, having Wes Craven, having written it, that pulls a lot of weight in why it was a good movie. Um, I I definitely, I think, like I said, I prefer number 1 over it.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely a strong entry, and number 2 is real fun as well. So this was definitely a fun double feature aspect of it. Um, from here on out, it gets a little dicey.
Well, that's why I talked to you about these two and not those.
Yeah, I can see why you picked those.
Well, it was fun. I love everything about it. Like I said, this is one of my favorite ones, and I still, after I watched this as a kid, I tried to recreate the house that she was making, Nancy's house, and I could
Oh
never get
yeah,
it right. Could never get it right. I might try to work on it now, and then I'm a little older. Maybe that'll give me something to do.
yeah. There you go.
I'll let you
There's
guys
probably
know
even
how it turns up.
there's probably even like designs online or something like that that you can use now.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. Maybe that'll help me keep Freddie away if I work on that house.
Just drink lots of coffee. You'd be working on that all night long.
Oh, the coffee part I got down. You don't have to worry
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that part.
All right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
So they can find me online on Twitter and Instagram at Donna underscore the THA _dead. And I do have a podcast, even though my voice is a little froggy right now, but I do have a podcast that I do as well. And so you can listen to me there if you want to hear a horror dork rambling like I did on this episode.
And you should definitely go listen to it. It is a very fun podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was great to have you on again. I know we'll be having you on again very soon.
Yay.
We'll talk
Can't
to you
wait to
then.
come back. Okay, bye.
Thanks again to Donna for joining me. On Friday's episode, Kevin Urich returns to the show to talk about 2008's The Incredible Hulk. And on Monday, Kat Velour returns to talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the Ko-fi page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.